The main attractions of the evening had not yet arrived. Gareth, the crown prince and her half-brother, usually stood like a reigning monarch at the center of the hall or perched on the second-floor gallery, surveying the room as if it were his own private chessboard. Beside him, Ayla, the very personification of nobility and grace, was a constant fixture. But we might not see Talia Roem Gwirta tonight, Talia murmured to herself, lifting a silver goblet from a nearby table. The image of Ayla collapsing in the middle of the ballroom, her face drained of color, flashed through her mind. A fierce, jagged thrill of satisfaction flared in Talia's chest. The memory of her stepsister shaking, spewing wine onto the pristine marble floor as if her very heart were being torn out, was a balm to Talia's soul. If only it were true. If only she would stay down. Talia ran a sharp nail along the surface of her goblet, the metal letting out a harsh, piercing screech. She had lost count of how many times she had prayed while watching her sister convulse on the floor. Just die, Ayla. Please, just close your eyes and never open them again. Your Highness. Talia, submerged in her own dark thoughts, jerked her head toward the voice. Standing before her was a man in a perfectly tailored dark green suit. He held one hand to his chest in a shallow, practiced bow. His face was familiar, one of the many faces that haunted her mother's social circles. It took a moment for his name to surface, Count Siorcan. A pleasure to see you again, Your Highness. You grow more breathtaking with every passing day. The Count looked at her with a hunger he barely bothered to mask, then bowed low and pressed a lingering kiss to the back of her hand. A shiver of revulsion crawled down Talia's spine, feeling for all the world like a slimy slug sliding across her skin. She forced her lips into a brittle smile. My mother sent you to keep me company, didn't she? Her Majesty is always concerned for your well-being, Princess, he replied, his evasive answer all the confirmation she needed. But even without her request, I could not have resisted the urge to speak with you. Look around. He leaned in, his voice a conspiratorial whisper in her ear. Every man in this room has his eyes on you, Your Highness. All of them, like me, dream of approaching you, of kissing your hand and showering you with praise. But they are cowards, none of them wish to invite the Crown Prince's wrath. And yet, you aren't afraid? I earned his hatred long ago, the Count replied with a sly, knowing grin. And because of that, I have the singular honor of being the one at your side. One could say my past failures have led to a grand success. Talia loathed men who clung to her, who performed their flattery like a rehearsed play. She openly despised them. But tonight, even a shield as flimsy as Count Siorcan felt like a sanctuary. Anything was better than standing alone under the weight of 1,000 judgmental stares. She accepted his presence with an air of cold condescension, as if granting him a great favor. And what else did my mother say? Did she tell you to rescue her pitiful eldest daughter, who wanders the hall like a lonely black crow? The Empress merely requested that I ensure you enjoy the reception to its fullest. Talia barely suppressed a hollow laugh. The Count led her toward the dance floor near the balcony. And she told me to do whatever is necessary to ensure you outshine everyone else at this ball. As they approached, the other dancers, swaying to the delicate strains of lutes and organs, stumbled back, casting glares of pure venom in their direction. Count Siorcan ignored them with practiced ease, turning to Talia and offering a deep, reverent bow. Will you grant me the honor of a dance, Your Highness? Talia looked with unconcealed contempt at his soft, pampered palm. She had no desire to touch him, or any man. But the caustic whispers and the sharp, cutting looks from the crowd only fueled her defiance. They want me to disappear. They want me to crawl into a corner and pretend I don't exist. I will not give them the satisfaction. Talia placed her hand in his. Sensing her acquiescence, the Count slid his arm around her waist and swept her onto the floor. Even Talia, who recoiled from most physical contact, had to admit the man was a masterful dancer. He followed the melody flawlessly, moving with a grace that seemed to enhance her own. For a moment, Talia allowed herself to get lost in the rhythm. She caught sight of her reflection in the eyes of the onlookers. Hundreds of people, who only moments ago had looked at her with nothing but disdain, now found themselves unable to look away. A cold sense of triumph surged through her. Usually, when she appeared at these functions, people would pretend she was invisible while secretly tracking her every move with wariness and contempt. But tonight was different. They were looking at her the same way they looked at her mother, with a fear that was indistinguishable from admiration. Their gazes felt sticky, greedy, and piercing, wrapping around her like a web. In that moment, she felt like Genevieve. Powerful. Dangerous. The most beautiful woman in the world. But the victory was short-lived. The music sputtered to a halt. The air in the room seemed to thin as the true masters of the evening made their entrance. His Imperial Highness, Crown Prince Gareth Roem Gwirta. And Her Imperial Highness, Princess Ayla Roem Gwirta. The herald's voice boomed through the hall. The doors swung wide, and the golden pair stepped across the threshold, descending the marble staircase with a majesty that made the room go still. And just like that, Talia was discarded. The attention that had been hers only seconds ago vanished, pulled toward the true heirs like iron filings to a magnet. Count Siorcan, a bitter smile touching his lips, led her away from the floor toward the terrace where the refreshments were laid out. "A pity our fun was so rudely interrupted," he muttered, trying to catch her eye. Talia wasn't listening. Her gaze was locked on Ayla. Her sister stood there in a gown of dazzling white, her face illuminated by a radiant smile. It was as if she had entirely forgotten the humiliation of her earlier collapse. Beside her brother, she was the very image of refined, unassailable grace. Rage, hot and corrosive, filled Talia's heart. She stared at them, at their thick black hair, their piercing emerald eyes, and their ivory skin. They possessed an innate dignity, a rightness that neither she nor her mother could ever achieve, no matter how many dresses they wore or how many men they charmed. Genevieve was the serpent who had seduced a saint, dragging him into the mire of adultery. And Talia was merely the spawn that had crawled from that same mire. No matter how many children Genevieve gave the emperor, it would change nothing. Talia watched as a fawning crowd swarmed the heirs, then she turned abruptly to the wine table. She caught the whispers of the guests, who only moments ago had looked at her with awe but were now casting pitying, meaningful glances her way. Every nerve in her body felt like it was about to snap. She wanted to reach out and tear the eyes from their sockets. "Don't you dare compare me to them." The words screamed in her head, but she kept her face a mask of cold indifference. Beside her, the Count spoke again, his voice tactless and mocking. "It seems their highnesses have decided to ignore you entirely. What do you say, princess? Will you be the one to greet them first?" Talia shot him a look dripping with venom. He only grinned, clearly enjoying the spectacle of her fury. "Isn't that why you're here?" Talia bit her lip until she tasted copper. He was right. She had come here to ruin their moment, to strike a discordant note in their perfect symphony. Genevieve would have wanted nothing less. Steeling her resolve, Talia gripped her goblet and began to weave through the crowd, heading straight for her siblings. But then, the doors to the hall opened once more. Varkas Laedgo Siorcan stepped into the room. Talia froze. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a wild, panicked thing caught in a trap.